Good evening. Thank you very much for being here. So I'm Mathilde Le Moigne. I'm a postdoc at the University of Zurich, and I work at the Kuhne Center for Sustainable Trade and Logistics. And at the Kuhne Center, my work focuses on evaluating the environmental impact of international trade. So my research question is very simple. Is international trade bad for the environment? Uh-oh. That's not exactly my slide, though. Where's my question? Okay, we'll have to do then. So, is international trade bad for the environment? This question is important because most of what we consume in our daily lives involves directly or indirectly traded goods. And globalization has this terrible reputation when it comes to the environment because of the transportation of goods across the planet. So there's this widespread perception that it is in fact better to consume locally produced goods in order to be environmentally conscious. So my work at the center assesses whether this is true, both using data. I collect and calculate emissions from production and transportation of traded goods, and by using theory, whereby I simulate patterns of trade in a world with carbon accounting and carbon pricing. So, is international trade bad for the environment? The quick answer is yes, but not for the reasons we think. In 2018, international trade accounted for 31% of global CO2 equivalent emissions. This number is substantial. However, only a third of those emissions could truly be attributed to the transportation of goods from point A to point B. In other words, the reason why international trade is bad for the environment is because of what we trade, not because of how we trade it. Specifically, we tend to trade goods that are produced in countries that have brown technology. Yet, there is substantial heterogeneity across countries in terms of how green the production technology for any given good can be. So my research shows that by choosing the right origins of production, by choosing the greenest producers, trade could actually be a force of good in the fight against climate change. To give you a concrete number, 22% of European imports today are green sourced, meaning that it is actually better for the environment to buy them from abroad and transport them here than to produce them locally. I'm going to give an example that really hurts my French pride. A consumer in Rotterdam might think that choosing a Bordeaux wine rather than a Napa Valley wine would be the environmentally friendly choice, on top of being obviously the better one. Unfortunately, that's not true for two reasons. First, in fact, viniculture emits about 50% more in France than in California because of climate advantage. So this is exactly this dispersion in terms of production technology that I was mentioning. And second, road transportation emits 20 times more greenhouse gas emissions per ton kilometer than sea transport. Now, the distance between San Francisco and Rotterdam being only 18 times higher than the distance between Bordeaux and Rotterdam, the transport emissions are not even lower so that they could compensate the higher production emissions. And so this idea of the green sourcing potential of international trade extends to all of the sectors of economic activity. So on this plot, each dot is a sector on the space of how much dispersion in terms of green technology production there exists across country on the horizontal axis, and how much transport emissions they require on the vertical axis. And you can really see two areas of the plot. On this upper left quadrant, we have sectors that we really want to consume locally. Why? Because transporting those goods and services emits more than producing them pretty much anywhere. This is the case, for example, for services, because it is way more polluting to transport an individual than to just, give a talk or a seminar. At the other extreme, You have sectors that we really want a green source because there is such a dispersion in terms of where the green technology is that we should really thrive to source those products and those services from the greenest worldwide producers. This is true, for example, for raw materials, and this is true, for example, for furnitures. The pictures that I had before, one of those two was the greenest factory of furniture there is in the world today. So let me just re-emphasize that point, right? To the question, is international trade bad for the environment? My answer is yes, but not because it involves transporting goods across the planet. The sustainable state of trade is trade. And at the Kuhne Center, we worked on establishing how we can achieve this sustainable state of trade with a global carbon tax that would put a price on carbon. Because by internalizing the environmental impact of what we consume and what we produce, we should be encouraged to trade more, but specifically more intelligently by buying green rather than local. Thank you very much.